Good morning. My name is Yelena Dewald, and I am in Interdisciplinary Studies and Geography.
Use the mic because of the door.
Good morning. My name is Yelena Dewald, and I am an Interdisciplinary Studies and Geography major. The subject of my research was how the internet has impacted Iranian youth culture and the cultural perceptions of youth in Iran. Today, I will begin by giving a brief introduction to the subject of Iran, as well as my research methodology. I will then describe the current situation in Iran and how this has led to the use of the internet for political purposes, as well as general use by the public. I will then present my research findings and give supporting evidence. Iran has been playing an increasingly important role in the international community. There's been ongoing controversy over Iran's nuclear program, as well as more recently, we've seen attempts to thaw relations between the United States and Iran. And even within the past week, we've seen media coverage of the situation of a young Iranian American in Iran who was arrested. Therefore, at this point in history, it is extremely important to attempt to understand the culture behind this increasingly important nation. The research question that I posed when I originally started doing my study was, how has the internet impacted youth culture in Iran? The methodology that I used to study this was by looking at literary works as well as peer-reviewed journals. I also did first-hand research of Iranian blogs written in English. Now, this did limit my study due to the fact that most published works on the internet in Iran focus on its use for political purposes and does not cover general use by the population. In addition, I was only able to look at those Iranian blogs written by Iranians who were both fluent in and literate in English. However, I attempted to take this into account as I conducted my research.
Click here.
This subject is particularly interesting at the current point in time, given the demographics of Iran. The average age in Iran is over 10 years younger than the average age in the United States. This is due largely to the fact that over 2/3 of the population is under the age of 30. The demographic group that I was looking at, youth, qualifies as any person between the ages of 15 and 30. This group has a unique perspective with regards to their parents, because unlike their parents, they were born after the Iranian Revolution of 1979, which put the current government in place. In addition, these individuals grew up with access to the internet, which their parents did not have growing up. Now, the history of the internet in Iran is particularly interesting because the government originally endorsed technology and the internet as a method of spreading Islam. This made Iran second only to Israel in the Middle East to gain access to the internet. In addition, due to bureaucratic disagreements, private internet service providers developed technologically independently from government regulation. Although the government has attempted to increase control over what can be accessed on the internet, they've had many difficulties and setbacks due to technological disadvantages. The methodology that the government currently uses to enforce restrictions on the internet simply includes forcing internet service providers to restrict access to certain websites or to websites with keywords in the title. However, the general population in Iran has the technological understanding to be able to bypass these regulations, either by using proxy servers, which would look like Google on the internet, but function as a web browser, such as Internet Explorer or Safari. In addition, people can reroute their internet access through servers in other countries, thereby bypassing the restrictions. This has created a uniquely open form of communication in a society which is traditionally strictly regulated. It was actually the Iranian government's actions with regards to the printed press which originally drove many people to the internet. Between 2003 and 2008, over 100 print publications were closed, leaving almost nowhere to go but to the internet for reformist journalists. However, it is not just journalists who have turned to the internet. In addition, politicians have seen the internet as an open form of communication with which to communicate with their population. The first politician to create a blog was the vice president under reformist President Khatami, and the current president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, has a blog which is maintained in multiple languages, including English. However, the majority of the people on the internet are not politicians or reformist journalists. The vast majority of people using the internet are simply everyday citizens talking about their everyday life experiences. For instance, this is a blog entry talking about nothing more politically controversial than rejection from the opposite sex. However, even having this freedom to discuss everyday life is revolutionary for a society in which actions in public are traditionally extremely regulated. In this instance, a blogger discusses the underground rap community, which has had to remain outside of the government's view, despite the fact that rap is extremely popular in Iran. He discusses a particular rapper whose music can be found on YouTube for those who are able to bypass government regulations. This particular rapper focuses his lyrics on God, his country, and his friends and family. In addition, in this particular post, a blogger discusses how the Iranian government in Tehran is attempting to regulate a television show because it shows what, in his opinion, are the everyday realities of life in Tehran. The same blogger here discusses the relations between Iranians and their Arab neighbors. This blog entry shows not only an awareness of, but an understanding and an interest in culture around him. This is very common, actually, for many bloggers. Even those who are religious draw on their religion when discussing many things on the internet. For instance, one blogger discusses the violence around the world, saying, Moses taught us wisdom, Jesus love, and Muhammad life. So where did all these death chants come from? Another one discusses the teachings of a religious leader in the Shia tradition, Hussein, when he says that if you are not a believer, at least be a libertarian. In addition, the internet has provided an open form of communication for women. Over 65% of students entering universities in Iran are women. However, these individuals often have difficulty finding jobs once they enter the job market because most occupations are already filled by men. However, the internet has provided a forum in which men and women can meet as equals and discuss many topics which are traditionally banned in Iranian society. Iranian youth clearly value their cultural heritage. Not only do Iranians want accountability in the government, and in addition, the opportunity to better their lives, both of which are core values in the Shia and Persian tradition. But additionally, the current dissatisfaction with the Iranian government is characteristic of the traditional notion that a government which does not fulfill the needs of the people is unfit to govern. Many Iranians follow another one of the teachings of Hussein, which says the most honorable jihad is a just word spoken to an unjust ruler. The internet has become a medium through which Iranians not only express their culture, but share it with other Iranians and the rest of the world. Are there any questions? Yes?
I was wondering, so in Iran, with the Iranian youth culture experiencing the internet and exploring their culture and also other people's cultures, do any of the other countries in the Middle East have similar cultures where their youth is comprising like a large portion of their culture and they're also being impacted by the internet in such ways?
Well, I didn't really focus my study on any countries other than Iran. However, in Iran there is extensive technological development, which I don't feel is quite as comparable in surrounding nations. There is a statistic comparing Iran to Iraq in, I think it was 2004. There were approximately 25,000 bloggers in Iran, when there were fewer than 1,000 known bloggers in Iraq. So, are there any other questions? Yes?
Are there a lot of sites that are restricted? Like, is the internet very restricted?
The internet is extremely restricted by the government regulations. However, the vast majority of actual people can bypass these regulations and thereby access almost any site on the internet. For instance, YouTube is blocked in Iran, but by using proxy websites or rerouting the internet connection through servers in other countries, they're able to access these blocked sites. Yes?
Does the internet reach all the way to the rural villages?
The internet has been expanding to rural villages. Every year, the internet connections are further expanded. Currently, the internet is not everywhere in Iran, but it is increasing rapidly. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.